I didn't know it at the time, but the phone call I answered that Thursday evening would be the start of the most painful and liberating journey of my life. It was 6:12 p.m. I was just finishing up a lukewarm bowl of soup at the kitchen table, surrounded by the familiar clutter of bills, discount flyers, and unopened medical statements. I thought it might be the pharmacy calling about my prescription refill. But when I picked up, I recognized the voice immediately. "Mom?" Ava said, breathless, like she'd been crying. "Can I come over?" I didn't even hesitate. "Of course," I said, standing up and instinctively heading to the stove to make tea. "Is everything all right?" There was a pause. I need to see you. It's about rent, and can I just come now?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'll put the kettle on." She hung up before I could say another word. I glanced around my small, one-bedroom home, the one I'd managed to keep after Frank passed away 2 years ago. The couch was still sagging on one side. The same faded photo collage of Ava's childhood lined the living room wall. Her 8th-grade piano recital. The science fair trophy. The time she met her dad at the airport with a "Welcome Home from Deployment" sign she colored by hand. I rubbed my tired eyes and whispered, "What happened to that girl?" The knock came 15 minutes later. Ava walked in wearing oversized sunglasses despite the cloudy sky and a jacket I hadn't seen before, designer if I wasn't mistaken. But her face beneath the glasses looked worn, eyes puffy, lips chapped. Her hair, once silky and well-kept, was now tied up in a fraying bun. She sat without waiting to be invited, her fingers twitching as she set her phone on the coffee table. Always face down. Always on silent. "You hungry?" I offered, reaching for a second bowl. She shook her head. "No. Just tea." We sat in silence for a while, the clock ticking audibly in the background. I studied her face. She avoided my gaze. "It's Derek," she finally said, tracing a chipped edge of the mug. "He bailed on rent again. Spent it all on that damn crypto thing." I didn't respond. I'd heard the Derek stories before. "And I got laid off last week," she added, her voice softer. "Something about restructuring. I've been applying to places, but it's been slow. I just need something to hold me over till next paycheck." My heart clenched, not because she was asking, but because she was lying. Again. "How much?" I asked, though I already knew. She hesitated. 200. Just to make rent. "I can pay you back once the new job starts." I stared at the wallet on the counter. Inside it, exactly $117.26. That was supposed to stretch me through the end of the month. Gas, food, and that prescription I hadn't picked up yet. "I only have 100 I can spare," I said slowly. "But it's yours." Her shoulders relaxed as she reached for her bag. "Thank you. Seriously, No," I said gently, pushing it across the table. "No IOUs. Just be okay, Ava." She pocketed the cash without another word. 5 minutes later, she was gone. As I closed the door behind her, I noticed something strange. The cabinet under the sink, where I kept the old file box with Frank's military pension paperwork and a copy of our will, was slightly ajar. I brushed it off. Maybe I hadn't closed it properly, but something didn't feel right. 3 days passed without a word from Ava. I texted her twice. No reply. Then Sunday morning, I woke up to a message. "I'm fine. I just need space. Don't call me." That was it. I sat at the table, phone in one hand, cold tea in the other, wondering what had gone wrong this time. Was she ashamed? Was it Derek again? Or was it something more? That night, as I was tidying up, I knocked over the old ceramic dish where I kept letters from Frank. One fluttered out, the last one he wrote before he died. But as I reached to put it back, I noticed another envelope underneath. Yellowed. Unfamiliar. It was addressed to me. In Ava's handwriting. Shaking, I opened it. And what I read sent my heart into my throat. "I know you'll hate me when you find out, but I need you to understand why I did it. Why I had to take the papers." My fingers trembled as I scanned the letter. She had stolen the house deed. She had forged my signature on a power of attorney document she found in Frank's files. and she'd already been in contact with a realtor. I dropped the letter as if it had burned me. My daughter, my only child, was planning to sell my house from underneath me, and I hadn't even picked up my heart medication yet. Before we continue, take a moment to let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to more powerful stories like this one. I sat at the kitchen table for what felt like hours, staring at the letter Ava had left behind. My hands were stiff with cold and shock. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, but I barely noticed. Every line of Ava's handwriting carved deeper into my chest. You always talked about how tired you were, how much this house costs. I thought I was helping. I didn't mean to lie. But you wouldn't have listened. You never do. That part hurt more than the theft itself. That after everything, years of scraped together rent, of co-signing on her failed apartment leases, of bailing her out after every ill-advised relationship, she believed I didn't listen. That I never cared. But it was the next paragraph that made my stomach turn. I gave Derek the documents. He said he knows a guy who can push the sale through fast. I didn't read all the details, but it'll be fine. He swore we could get a quick payout. She didn't read the details. Frank had warned me before he passed. Ava's got a big heart but no compass, he'd said one night from his hospital bed. She gets swept up in people who promise her shortcuts, especially men. I hadn't wanted to believe him. But now? Now I couldn't deny it. I folded the letter carefully, placing it in a new folder alongside our original deed and power of attorney papers, both still in their locked cabinet, which meant Ava had likely photocopied or forged them from the old samples I kept. I wasn't sure which, but I was sure of one thing. She was in over her head, and I was in danger of losing the only thing I had left, my home. The next morning, I took the letter and our official documents to the county clerk's office. The woman behind the desk, named Gloria, had kind eyes but a clipped tone. She examined the documents, clicking her pen repeatedly as she compared dates and signatures. "This power of attorney isn't valid," she said finally, holding up a worn-looking photocopy. "And this one," she held up the original, "hasn't been filed with the county since your husband passed." "Would that stop someone from trying to use it to sell the property?" I asked. She sighed. "It should. But if someone's working with a shady third party or fake title agency, they might try to bypass the usual process, especially if they're rushing a cash buyer situation." I nodded, my throat tightening. "What do I do?" She pointed to a printed form. "File a protective owner affidavit. It flags your property. Makes it clear no transfer can occur without your verified consent. It's a first layer of defense." "And the second?" "Hire a lawyer," she said bluntly. "Fast." By that afternoon, I was sitting in a downtown office that smelled faintly of leather and lavender. The receptionist handed me a clipboard as I waited to speak with Mrs. Caldwell, a real estate attorney with silver hair and a reputation for solving messy family property disputes. When she finally entered, Mrs. Caldwell sat with the kind of posture that said, "I've heard it all, and I don't scare easy." "You've done the right thing coming here," she said after I finished explaining. "And you're not the first. Financial exploitation by adult children is a growing issue, especially when a parent owns real estate." "Is it illegal?" I asked. "The forgery is. The use of a fraudulent power of attorney is. But the emotional betrayal, unfortunately, that's not criminal." I placed Ava's letter on the desk. She read it silently, her face tightening slightly at the mention of Derek. "You're going to need two things immediately," she said. "One, a cease and desist letter addressed to both your daughter and anyone she may have contacted about the sale. And two, a title lock placed on your property so that no transfers can happen without your written and verified authorization." "And if she's already made a deal?" "Then we go to court," she said. "We file an injunction to freeze the sale and expose any fraud. But I need to warn you, this can get ugly." I looked down at my hands, now trembling slightly. "I'm not afraid of ugly. I'm afraid of losing the only place I've ever felt safe." Mrs. Caldwell nodded. "Then let's make sure that doesn't happen." 3 days later, Ava showed up unannounced. Her knock was light, almost guilty. When I opened the door, she stood there in a hoodie that hung off her thin frame, her eyes dark with exhaustion. "Mom, we need to talk." I didn't step aside. "About what?" She bit her lip. "The papers. I messed up. Derek said we could get $180,000 in cash within 2 weeks, but now I'm not sure the deal's even legit. He won't answer my calls." I folded my arms. "You gave him copies of my documents without my consent. You lied to me. You stole." "I didn't steal," she said quickly. "I was going to tell you. I thought if I brought you a check for 100 grand, you'd be proud of me." "Proud?" I repeated. "Proud that you forged my name and tried to sell the roof over my head?" Her voice cracked. I didn't think it through. I was desperate. "No, Ava," I said, my voice calm and clear. "You were careless. And reckless. And manipulative." She flinched. "I've already filed a protective affidavit," I continued. "And I've hired an attorney. There's a cease and desist order en route to every real estate office within 20 miles. Ava's face turned white. You went legal?"
Yes.
"Because this house is all I have left. And I'm not going to let you gamble it away on another man's lie." She stepped back, eyes wide. "So that's it? You're just cutting me off." "I'm protecting myself," I said. "And maybe, just maybe, protecting you too." She didn't speak for several seconds. Then she pulled her hoodie up, turned around, and walked off my porch without saying goodbye. That night, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat on the porch, the air crisp with the promise of rain. For the first time in months, I didn't feel helpless. Or passive. I felt like someone who had finally drawn a line. And that night, after a long bath and 2 ibuprofen, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I bought a lottery ticket. Not because I believed I'd win, but because after everything, hope still felt better than fear. The next few days passed in a blur of small routines. I watered the porch ferns. I reorganized the pantry. I returned my neighbor Gladys's pie tin and stood there too long after she closed her front door, wishing someone would ask if I was okay. But no one did. That Wednesday evening, I almost forgot about the lottery ticket. It had slipped behind a magnet on the fridge, buried beneath expired coupons and a dentist reminder card I hadn't dared call back. I found it while digging for a recipe I never ended up using. I stared at it for a moment. It was just a habit now, one ticket every couple of weeks, usually tied to paydays or birthdays. A ritual. A flicker of imagined freedom. That night, I watched the numbers on the evening news, more out of obligation than anticipation. I was halfway through folding laundry when the broadcast began. "Tonight's winning numbers for the state's Millionaire Ball are..." The anchor's voice read out 6 numbers. I froze mid-fold. 1, 2. I grabbed the ticket from the counter and read it 3 times. Every single number matched. I blinked. My mouth opened, then closed again. It wasn't until the anchor added, "Tonight's jackpot sits at an unprecedented $38.6 million, that the full weight of it hit me. I had won. I had actually won. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I just stood in the middle of my kitchen, socks half-paired, and let the moment settle over me like snow. Then I sat down hard and cried. Not for the money, but for the brutal irony. 3 days ago, my daughter had tried to steal my house. And now I owned the world. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat by the window, watching streetlights flicker through the dark, imagining 1,000 versions of what this could mean. Pay off the house. Fix the roof. Travel. Paris? Alaska? Italy? Open a small bookstore? Volunteer full-time? But by morning, the fantasies were gone. Because Ava would find out eventually, and I knew what she would do. So before the sun came up, I called a lawyer. Not Mrs. Caldwell this time. This required someone new, discreet, someone unconnected to anyone Ava had ever met. That afternoon, I met with a man named Curtis Dyer. His office was 2 towns over, tucked above an old barber shop. No nameplate on the door. No receptionist. Just an unmarked stairwell and a small plaque that read Dyer Legal Strategies. "I'd like to remain anonymous," I told him. I want to claim the prize without anyone knowing my name, especially not my daughter. He didn't blink. I assume this is about safety, not taxes. It's about both, I said. And peace of mind. He nodded. We can file through a blind trust. The winnings will be held under a legal entity. Your name won't be tied to the public claim. Is that legal? It's smart, he replied. It's how most winners protect themselves. You'd be shocked how fast vultures gather. I didn't flinch at the term. One of those vultures might be my own child. He didn't ask for details. Just handed me a pen. Then let's make sure she can't touch a dime. By the end of the week, the winnings had been claimed by Red Fern Trust, a name Curtis let me choose. I opened a separate checking account under a Shell LLC, with only small automatic transfers to my regular account. To the outside world, I was still a woman clipping coupons and spacing out her utility bills. But inside, I was untouchable. Or so I thought. The first knock came on Saturday morning. It was barely 9 a.m. I had just made coffee and stepped outside with my robe pulled tight. My heart skipped when I saw the black SUV parked at the curb. Tinted windows. Running engine. Then I saw Ava standing on the porch, eyes red-rimmed, hands buried in her hoodie. "Mom," she said, barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I didn't move. "You're not supposed to be here." "I know, but I need to explain." "No," I said. "You need to go." "I lost everything," she said quickly, stepping forward. Derek took my phone. My car. He cleaned out my bank account. She looked thinner, frilier, desperate in a way I hadn't seen before. "I don't know where else to go," she said, eyes glistening. A long silence passed. Then I spoke, calm and even. "You stole from me. You forged my name. And now you're here because someone else did the same to you." Her face fell. I could almost see the wheels turning. She hadn't come to apologize. She'd come because she'd hit bottom. Because I was the last safety net she had. "I just need a place to sleep," she said. "One night. Please." I looked at the SUV. The driver's side window rolled down. A man in his late 30s stared back at me, wearing a baseball cap and mirrored glasses. Even from the porch, I could feel his eyes scan the house. "He your friend?" I asked. Ava turned, startled. It's just someone Derek owed money to. He offered to drive me." That was the first time the hairs on the back of my neck rose. The second time came when I saw the man's hand tapping against his leg, quick and impatient, like someone with too many debts and not enough time. "I'm sorry," I said softly, stepping back inside. "You can't stay here." "Mom." I closed the door and locked it. She didn't knock again. Just stood there for a long time before walking slowly back to the SUV. It pulled away without another word. But somehow I knew that man would be back. That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a private security firm. By Monday, I had a motion detection camera installed over my porch, reinforced locks, and a discreet alert system that sent pings directly to my phone. I had money now, and I intended to stay alive long enough to spend it. The camera alert came just after 2 a.m. I had been drifting off in the living room recliner, the television on low, a nature documentary murmuring in the background. When my phone buzzed, I thought it was a wrong number or maybe a weather notification. But when I saw the words "motion detected, front porch," my heart started racing. I opened the app, and there he was. The same man from the SUV. Derek's friend. He wasn't knocking. He wasn't calling out. He was walking around my porch slowly, like he was inspecting it. His hands were in his pockets, but his eyes weren't just scanning the door. They were studying the windows, the frame, the lock. I held my breath as he leaned in, pressing his ear against the front door like he was listening for movement inside. My blood turned cold. He didn't look angry. He looked calculating. I dialed 911 without hesitation. "Yes, I have a man on my property. I have a security camera. I'm watching him right now. No, I don't know him personally, but I believe he's connected to someone my daughter used to live with. I think he's looking for something. Or someone." The dispatcher kept me on the line. 3 minutes later, the cruiser lights flickered across my living room ceiling. The man was gone before they even pulled up. He vanished down the street like smoke. But the officer confirmed my footage showed him clearly enough. "He didn't damage anything, ma'am," Officer Thomas said, reviewing the clip on my phone. "But I'd call this suspicious behavior, especially this hour. I'd recommend pressing trespassing charges if he returns." I nodded. "What do I have to do?" "You already did it," he said, tipping his hat. "Call fast. Document everything. And ma'am, consider a backup battery for your camera in case he gets smart." When they left, I double-checked every lock in the house. I pulled the curtains. I turned on every lamp. Then I sat on the edge of my bed, holding Frank's old baseball cap in my hands, the one he wore every Sunday for lawn work. I don't know why, but it comforted me. "I wish you were here," I whispered into the dark. The next morning, I drove straight to Curtis Dyer's office. I didn't even call ahead. He took one look at me and waved me into the chair. "What happened?" I showed him the footage. Told him everything. He frowned as he watched the man move around the porch. "He's not casing your house," he muttered. "He's looking for access. He already knows the layout. And he's comfortable enough to return without disguise." I swallowed hard. "What should I do?" "You've already taken the right first steps. The trust is airtight. Your home is flagged with legal protections. But that doesn't mean they won't try something stupid, especially if they think you're hiding something." "I am hiding something," I said. 38 million somethings. Curtis almost smiled. "You're also hiding it well. But we can add more insulation." He opened a drawer and pulled out a packet. "A layered property shield," he explained. "It'll make your house harder to trace through public records. We'll use a trust-to-trust deed assignment. Keeps your name off the radar for people looking to exploit you." It was all Greek to me, but I signed everything. "I just want to be safe," I said. "I don't care about the money right now. I just want to sleep." "You will," Curtis assured me. "But you should consider something else, too." He handed me a card. "She's a counselor. Specializes in elder financial abuse and trauma recovery. You're dealing with more than just a legal problem, Margaret. You've been betrayed." I stared at the card for a long time after he left the room. Dr. Evelyn Marlowe, LCSW. I tucked it into my purse, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and started writing a letter. To Ava. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I needed to write the words anyway. To release them from my chest like pressure off a valve. "You were my world. And you let someone walk into it and light a match. You didn't just put me in danger. You destroyed my trust. But despite everything, I still see the little girl who used to climb into my lap with wet hair after a bath and say, 'Stay with me, Mommy. I don't know how to help you anymore.' And that's what scares me most." The next morning, I had a voicemail from an unknown number. It was Ava. Her voice was hoarse, quiet, afraid.
"Mom, please."
I didn't know Derek was that deep in debt. "The man you saw, he's not just some guy. He's dangerous. He's looking for collateral. He said he'd take something valuable if I couldn't pay. I don't know what that means. I think." She broke off. "Just be careful. If he finds out you have money."
Click.
No goodbye. No apology. Just a warning. I played it twice. 3 times. Then forwarded it to Curtis and the officer from the night before. And then I sat at my kitchen table and did something that surprised even me. I called the counselor. "Dr. Marlowe's office." The receptionist said cheerfully. "How can I help you?" "I need to talk to someone," I whispered. "My daughter put me in danger. And I think I stopped loving her about a week ago." I didn't know what I expected from therapy. Maybe a sterile office with ticking clocks and motivational posters about healing. But Dr. Evelyn Marlowe's office was warm.
Real.
Her bookshelf was cluttered with novels and framed photos of her golden retriever. The curtains were sunflower yellow. She didn't even sit behind a desk. Just 2 armchairs angled near a small coffee table. She didn't push me to start. She just handed me a cup of peppermint tea and waited. When I finally spoke, my voice felt like it belonged to someone else. I raised a daughter who would sell the deed to my house for a boyfriend with a gambling problem. Dr. Marlowe nodded gently. Tell me about your daughter. And I did. I told her about Ava's birth, how I almost lost her in the delivery room, how she came home with a tiny pink knit cap the nurse made by hand, how smart she was, how beautiful, how I worked double shifts as a school receptionist just to afford piano lessons and braces, how she used to write me notes in her lunchbox saying, "I love you more than peanut butter." I didn't cry until I got to Frank's death. She unraveled after that. I said quietly. Started skipping classes. Started dating boys who liked the idea of fixing her. Or using her. I tried everything. Talking. Bribing. Grounding. Therapy. But she'd just smile that half smile and say, "You don't get it, Mom. You've never lost someone." And you hadn't? Dr. Marlowe asked gently. I'd lost everything, I said. But I still made dinner. I still kept the lights on. I still showed up. Silence. And then I admitted something I hadn't said aloud, not even to myself. She didn't break my heart when she forged my signature, I whispered. She broke it when she looked me in the eye and pretended she hadn't. Dr. Marlowe leaned forward. It's okay to grieve someone who's still alive. That's what betrayal feels like. A living funeral. That sentence sat in the air between us, raw and true. A living funeral. Later that week, I received a certified envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in large letters. My stomach twisted. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter. But not from Ava. It was from a law firm, one I didn't recognize. Notice of intent to pursue collateral assets, the heading read. It was full of legal jargon, but the meaning was unmistakable. Derek, or rather, Derek's creditor, was claiming Ava had promised the house as guarantee of repayment. They had no deed, no valid power of attorney, no signed paperwork. But they had Ava's verbal assertion, and in the world of backroom debt collection, that was apparently enough to send threats. There was one line that chilled me to my bones. Should the outstanding balance remain unpaid, our client may pursue value-matching assets for seizure or leverage. I forwarded the letter to Curtis immediately. He called me 20 minutes later, his voice calm but firm. This isn't a legitimate legal notice. It's designed to scare you. But it confirms our suspicion. He's trying to force leverage based on Ava's word. The good news? You're fully protected. They can't touch the property. Can they touch me? I asked quietly. A pause. Not legally. But if they're desperate enough, they might escalate. That night, I didn't sleep. Not even with the extra locks and the cameras. Every creak in the house felt louder. Every shadow outside the window looked like a threat waiting to take form. But strangely, I didn't feel powerless.
Not this time.
The next day, I did something unexpected. I drove across town to the church where Frank and I used to volunteer. They ran a community kitchen on Thursdays, the kind where you could tell who needed food and who just needed someone to talk to. I showed up early and asked to help. By 4:30 p.m., I was slicing carrots with a woman named Yvonne who said she came every week just to feel useful. You new here? She asked, glancing at my nervous hands. Sort of, I replied. I used to come with my husband years ago. Life got in the way. She smiled. It always does. That's why we chop it back down every week. We laughed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt my lungs open up. Later, I stayed after the crowd thinned out and helped mop the floors. And when I left, my steps felt lighter. The fear hadn't disappeared, but something else had returned.
Me.
That weekend, Curtis and I met in person. I've been thinking, I told him, sliding a notebook across the table. This money, it shouldn't just sit in a vault. I want it to mean something, to outlive me. He raised an eyebrow. You have ideas? I nodded. A fund. For women like me. Women blindsided by financial betrayal. Maybe even domestic abuse victims or elderly clients taken advantage of by their kids. A place they can call. Get help. Legal aid.
Counseling.
Protection.
Dignity.
Curtis leaned back in his chair. That's not just generous. That's powerful. I don't want my story to be a secret forever, I said quietly. But I want it told on my terms. He nodded. We'll call it the Hollow Oak Fund, he said, pointing to the small oak tree pendant I always wore. Strong, rooted, quietly watching everything. I smiled. That night, I wrote a mission statement. But even as I reclaimed my voice and my strength, Ava remained silent. It had been 9 days since her last call. 10 since she showed up on my porch with that man. I didn't know if she was okay. But I knew I couldn't be the one to reach out.
Not yet.
Because this time, she would have to knock. It happened on a Sunday. The house was quiet. A breeze moved through the open windows, and the smell of lavender from the backyard garden drifted through like a memory. I was halfway through writing a list of ideas for the Hollow Oak Fund. Notes about emergency housing, legal workshops, a possible scholarship for single mothers. When the doorbell rang, I froze. It wasn't the buzzy chime of a delivery person. It was 3 soft, deliberate chimes, like someone unsure of whether they'd be welcomed. I looked through the peephole.
Ava.
She looked different, smaller. Her sweatshirt hung loosely off her frame. Her shoes were scuffed. A canvas tote bag hung from one shoulder, and in her hands she held something that made my throat tighten. A folder. I opened the door but didn't say anything.
Neither did she.
For a long moment, we just stood there. Then she held out the folder toward me. What is it? I asked, not reaching for it. She swallowed. Everything. The fake deed. The photocopied signature. The text messages with Derek. I thought if I gave it to you, maybe you could, I don't know, burn it, frame it, use it to testify against me. I took the folder and stepped aside slowly. She entered like someone who had been exiled from sacred ground. Her eyes scanned the room, but not like she was looking for something, more like she was remembering everything she used to have access to. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. There was no tea, no small talk, just the sound of a daughter trying to find her voice again. I've been staying at the Y, she said finally. One of the shelters. I work mornings at a gas station, nights at a diner. I didn't interrupt. I know what I did, and I know I can't undo it. But I also know that if I don't say it aloud, I'll never stop lying to myself. She looked up at me then. I betrayed you. There it was. The confession I never thought I'd hear. I didn't do it because I hated you, or because I wanted to hurt you. I thought if I could fix everything quickly, you'd look at me like you used to. Like when I got that perfect spelling test score in 3rd grade, and you cried in the parking lot because you said you were so proud. I blinked fast. You didn't need to buy back my pride, I said softly. You just needed to tell me the truth. Before it broke both of us. I thought if Derek's plan worked, we'd be rich. You'd be relieved. We'd laugh about it. But when it started falling apart, I panicked. I kept thinking, if I just spin this lie a little longer, maybe I can still pull it off. That's how all betrayals start, I said, with small lies told for the sake of love. She stared at the table.
He's gone.
I haven't seen him since the night he left me outside your house. He cleaned me out. I had $4 to my name when I woke up in that motel room. My stomach turned, remembering the SUV, the late-night prowling, the envelope of veiled threats. That man who showed up on my porch, I said. Was he dangerous? Yes, she said simply. And stupid. He was Derek's fixer. The guy who collected debts, scared people into paying. I think he believed I had access to something. Money.
You.
I told him I didn't. Then why did he threaten to come back? Ava's voice dropped. Because I told him you had nothing. But he didn't believe me. He thought I was protecting you. He kept saying you were acting different, that you had quiet money. I swear, Mom, I didn't tell him anything about the house after you shut the door. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the young woman across from me with the girl who used to write me sticky notes that said, "You're the best, Mom." I know you can't forgive me, she added. I said nothing. She reached into her bag and pulled out a plastic grocery bag, wrinkled and nodded. I have something else, she said. I bought it with my first tip night. It's dumb, but I wanted you to have it. She handed me the bag. Inside was a single teacup. Porcelain. Delicate. Cheap, probably from a thrift store. But it had small violets painted on the rim, just like the ones on the teacup Derek had broken the night he first came over. The one Ava had knocked off the shelf when she stormed out. I ran my thumb along the edge of it. It was imperfect, but whole. "I'm not asking to move back in," she said quickly. "Or for money. Or for a fresh start." I looked at her. "Then what are you asking for?" She swallowed. "A chance to rebuild something, even if it takes years." Another silence. Then I said, "You know, I've been seeing someone." Her eyebrows lifted. "Not a man," I added with a faint smile. "A therapist."
Oh.
She helped me understand that forgiveness isn't an instant choice. It's a practice, a boundary, a repeated act of saying, "I'll see who you're becoming, not just who you were." "I'd like that," she whispered. I nodded, then stood slowly. I walked to the drawer near the pantry and pulled out an envelope. "I wrote this the night you disappeared. I wasn't sure I'd ever give it to you, but it says everything I was too tired to say out loud." She took it with both hands, like it was glass. And for the first time in months, we stood there, mother and daughter, and neither of us walked away. That night, I sat alone again, but not in grief, in reflection. I placed the teacup on the kitchen shelf beside a photo of Frank and Ava at her 6th grade graduation. And beside it, I taped a sticky note. Rebuilding. Day 1. A week passed. Ava didn't call. She didn't text.
She didn't come by.
But somehow that was all right. We had both learned that healing doesn't come from constant closeness. It comes from space, from showing up differently. I spent those days focused on the Hollow Oak Fund. Curtis helped me start the process of filing for nonprofit status, and I met with a financial planner he recommended, a young woman named Clarissa, who had a mind like a calculator and a heart like an advocate. This fund could help hundreds of people, Clarissa told me as we reviewed a draft proposal. Maybe even thousands, depending on how you allocate the trust. "I don't want to throw money at a problem," I said. "I want to build solutions." "You're doing both," she replied. And most people never get to say that. It felt strange, powerful, even, to be trusted with something that had once seemed impossible. A legacy. But later that afternoon, I had to stop by my bank. It was meant to be a short visit, just a routine update to the backup beneficiary info on my small personal account, my name, nothing tied to the trust. I brought the paperwork, my ID, and an old folder containing Frank's military documents for verification. It was supposed to take 10 minutes. But when the teller, a polite young man named Harris, opened my profile, his brow furrowed. "That's odd." "What is?" I asked. "There was an activity alert on your account last week," he said slowly. "But it looks like it was flagged and then dismissed. Let me check something." He tapped a few keys. The color drained from his face. "Ma'am," he said, "it says someone attempted to initiate a wire transfer from your savings account, $9,800. The request came through online banking, but the IP address was flagged as unusual. It triggered a freeze. Did you authorize that?" I blinked. "I don't have a savings account." He looked up. "According to this, you do. It was opened 7 weeks ago. Same name, same social security. The funds were transferred in from a closed life insurance policy belonging to—"
He paused.
"To Frank Holloway, your late husband." My mouth went dry. "That policy was never supposed to release," I said. "It was a military payout with a stipulation that I couldn't claim the final disbursement until after 20 years of survivor benefits. I never touched it." "Someone did," he said. "And they did it using verified documents." I knew what he meant before I asked. "I need a copy of the ID they used to open that account," I said.
Now.
He hesitated. "Technically, I need to escalate this to the fraud team." "Please," I said, my voice cracking. "Just show me." He turned the screen toward me briefly, and I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. It was a scan of my driver's license. But the address was wrong, slightly off. The expiration date didn't match. And the photo, though expertly manipulated, was not mine. It was Ava. Not the Ava who had handed me back forged papers. The Ava from a few months ago. Confident, careless, full of some new scheme. She had used my name. Used Frank's name. Used his death to steal almost $10,000. Before the trust. Before the cameras. Before I locked my doors. I stood there shaking, heat flushing up my neck. Is the money still in the account? I asked quietly.
He checked. Yes.
It's been frozen pending verification. Then I want it closed. And I want fraud charges filed immediately. He froze. Ma'am, are you sure? I'm not doing this for revenge, I said. I'm doing it because the next time she forges a name, it won't be mine. It'll be someone else's mother, or grandmother, or someone who can't afford to lose a penny. He nodded slowly. I'll flag it and have a fraud rep contact you. They may need to involve law enforcement. I left the bank numb, barely remembering how I got home. My hands trembled as I pulled the folder Ava had given me from the drawer. I wanted to believe it had been complete, that she had surrendered everything. But now, the teacup felt like a prop in a play I hadn't agreed to star in. That night, she called. Hi, Mom. Her voice was tentative. Just checking in. I was silent. Is everything okay? She asked. No, I said. It isn't. Her breath caught. I went to the bank today, I said slowly. They showed me something. Mom, please. You opened an account in my name, I said. You used Frank's death to steal from me. I did it before, she said quickly. Before you changed the locks. Before you called the lawyer. I was desperate. I thought. You thought I'd never find out, I snapped. Or that if I did, I'd forgive you like I always do. I'm not that person anymore, she said. But you were, I said. And you never told me. Even after everything. After the letter, the teacup, the tears, you still kept it hidden. Silence. I continued, voice trembling. You don't get to decide when you've healed, Ava. Not without telling the full truth. I didn't want to lose whatever was left between us, she whispered. You already lost it, I said. The day you decided my name was a tool. More silence. Then, very quietly, what happens now? I don't know, I said. But I'm not protecting you this time. The account has been flagged. There's an investigation coming. And I won't lie to cover you. Another pause. And then softly. I understand. The call ended without goodbyes. Just silence. Later that night, I pulled out the mission statement for the Hollow Oak Fund. And I added a new line at the bottom. We serve the women who survived. And the women still trying to become someone worth forgiving. I didn't hear from Ava again for 2 weeks. Not a text. Not a knock. Not a whisper on the wind. But I saw her on the security feed. 3 times. Each time, she approached the edge of my driveway, looked up at the porch camera, and left. No bag. No speech. Just a daughter hovering at the perimeter of a life she had once belonged to. The 3rd time, she left something on the porch. An envelope. Inside was a folded note and a business card from the shelter she was staying at. The note read, I understand. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say, I know I'm being investigated. I won't fight it. I'll accept whatever comes. That was all. No signature. No blame. Just resignation. I sat with it in my lap for nearly an hour. The truth was, the investigation was already moving quickly. After I submitted a formal complaint to the bank's fraud department, they contacted federal authorities. A detective from the Financial Crimes Unit named Bethany Kramer came to my house that Friday morning. She wore a blazer with a security badge clipped to her belt and a notepad that barely left her hand. Ms. Holloway, she said as I poured her coffee, thank you for being willing to cooperate. I know this is personal. I nodded. She's my daughter. And what she did was still a crime. That kind of clarity is rare, she said. Most parents stall. They minimize. They rationalize. They let it slide. And then we end up dealing with identity theft cases that escalate fast. I opened a drawer and handed her the folder Ava had originally given me, the one I thought had contained everything. I believed she was trying to change, I said. But change doesn't happen in half measures. Detective Kramer nodded, flipping through the documents. This shows premeditation. That works in your favor from a prosecutorial standpoint. Does it have to go to trial? I asked, quieter now. Isn't there a way for her to face consequences without it destroying whatever's left of her? There's always a choice, she said gently. But it's not yours anymore. It's the state's. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Because for once, I couldn't protect her. I couldn't step between her and accountability like I had so many times before. Ava would have to stand in front of a judge and explain why she used her dead father's life insurance payout to steal from her own mother. And I'd have to sit in the courtroom and watch. 3 weeks later, the hearing was set. Ava had been formally charged with attempted financial fraud, identity misrepresentation, and misuse of federal benefits. Because of the amount, just under $10,000, it qualified as a felony. But Ava's public defender had negotiated a plea deal in exchange for full cooperation, restitution, and enrollment in a mandatory financial rehabilitation program. The court would decide whether she deserved that leniency. That morning, I wore navy slacks and a pressed blouse. Nothing flashy. I sat alone in the second row of the courtroom, next to a bailiff who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Ava entered quietly, escorted by a court officer. She wore a simple gray sweater and slacks. No makeup. No defense. Just eyes that had already cried too much and a posture that said she wasn't expecting mercy. The judge reviewed the charges. The prosecutor spoke first, professional, direct, outlining the steps of the crime and the risk it presented. Then Ava's defender stood. He didn't plead for pity. Instead, he spoke of recovery, of accountability, of a young woman unraveling after years of emotional loss and bad choices. When it was Ava's turn to speak, she rose slowly. And for the first time in a long time, she looked like my daughter again. My mother saved every cent she ever had to keep a roof over our heads, she said clearly. And I tried to sell it out from under her. A few heads in the courtroom turned toward me. I didn't flinch. I can't undo what I did, Ava continued. But I can make sure it never happens again. I am not asking to be let off. I'm asking for a chance to become someone she can trust again. The judge nodded slowly. You're fortunate to have a parent willing to cooperate with the process. I'm not sure I deserve her, Ava said. Neither was I. But I stayed silent. In the end, the court approved the plea deal. Ava would avoid jail time, but her record would remain. She was ordered to pay back the full amount with interest, attend weekly financial ethics classes, and complete 200 hours of community service, preferably at an elder fraud prevention hotline. As we left the courtroom, Ava didn't try to walk beside me. She trailed behind. When we stepped out into the morning air, she paused by the courthouse steps. I meant what I said, she told me. I'll never ask you for $1 again. I looked at her face, worn from consequence, but finally free from lies. I don't care about the $1, I said. I care about the difference. She nodded. Then she held out the business card from her financial ethics program. If you ever want to see what I'm learning, she said, they offer a family outreach day once a month. I took the card. She walked away. Not defeated. Not defiant. Just growing. And for the first time, I let her go without looking over my shoulder. That night, I received a call from Curtis. The Hollow Oak Fund is officially registered, he said. You're now the founder of a legal nonprofit with full discretion over disbursement and structure. Congratulations, Margaret. I sat down slowly. Do you want to make a press announcement? He asked. Or stay private? I thought about Ava. About every woman in that courtroom whose name had never been stolen, but whose power had. Not yet, I said. But soon. And then I opened my laptop, stared at the blinking cursor on a blank document, and typed the words. This is the story of how I lost everything to the child I loved most, and how I got it back by finally choosing myself. 6 months passed. 6 months of silence between Ava and me, followed, one morning, by a letter. Not a text, not a voicemail, A handwritten letter on plain lined paper, addressed simply, Mom. I thought about calling, but I wanted you to have the option to walk away. Reading is easier than hearing disappointment or silence. I've completed 148 of the 200 community service hours. The last 52 are scheduled at Hollow Oak if your team will allow it. I didn't put your name down on the paperwork. I didn't use your story. I didn't even tell them I knew you. I wanted to earn my place, like everyone else does. It was signed only with her initials.
H.
I read it twice. Then I picked up the phone and called Clarissa, the Hollow Oak Funds program coordinator. There's an Ava Holloway on your community roster, I said. Did she apply to work with our hotline project? Clarissa's pause was brief, but telling.
Yes.
She's one of the most consistent volunteers we've had in the past month. She didn't name drop, if that's what you're wondering. But I figured it out on my own. And I asked. She's quiet. She listens more than she talks. But when she does speak, the women trust her. Not because she knows everything, but because she knows exactly how it feels. I sat back in my chair. Would you be comfortable if she stayed on as part of our external advocacy team? Clarissa asked gently. We're preparing a new grant cycle, and her name came up as a peer liaison. I thought about the teacup, the fake bank account, the courtroom speech. The truth is, I had stopped looking for a moment of perfect reconciliation. But maybe this wasn't about repairing something broken. Maybe it was about building something new. Let her stay, I said. But don't treat her like my daughter. Of course. Treat her like someone trying to be better than she used to be. 2 weeks later, the story broke. Not Ava's. Mine. I had agreed to a private feature article for the Herald Ledger, a regional paper that was doing a series on anonymous philanthropy and elder empowerment. The journalist, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Karina Park, had been recommended by Curtis. She interviewed me in the sunroom of my home, with my teapot between us and my boundary lines firmly drawn. We never used Ava's name. We didn't mention court records or fake accounts. But I told the truth. About betrayal. About winning the lottery. About what it meant to choose peace over pity. And about the Hollow Oak Fund, born not out of wealth, but out of survival. Karina's piece ran under the headline, The Woman Who Gave It All Away to Keep Herself Whole. It was shared nearly 17,000 times in a single week. The article never went viral, but it didn't need to. It reached the right people. Donors started contacting Curtis's office. So did domestic violence shelters, women's clinics, senior centers. Suddenly, we had applications from 14 different states, all asking for assistance, education, microgrants, or just someone to talk to. I hired 2 new counselors. Clarissa added a second phone line. And every day, I watched something that once came from pain bloom. The last Friday of March, I was scheduled to speak at a community luncheon hosted by a local women's resource coalition. It was a small event. No cameras, no press, just folding chairs, lukewarm coffee, and women who had built themselves from scraps. I almost didn't go, but I'm glad I did, because that's where I met her. A woman in a blue scarf, sitting quietly near the back. Early 30s. Nervous hands. Worn-down shoes. She waited until the very end to approach. Miss Holloway? She asked gently. I turned. Yes. I wanted to say thank you. I smiled. For the talk. For everything. I read your story last month. It was like someone had put words to my whole life. My daughter forged my name to co-sign a car loan. I didn't press charges. And then she did it again. This time for a payday loan. I lost my credit. My house. Everything. I felt a chill run down my back. But your story, it made me realize that saying no isn't the same as giving up on someone. She held out an envelope. This is my application.
For the Restart Grant.
I wasn't going to send it in, but I think I'm ready to stop surviving. I want to rebuild. I took the envelope in my hands and squeezed hers gently. You already started. That evening, I returned home to an email from Clarissa. Subject: Ava Holloway's grant proposal draft. Hi, Margaret. Just forwarding for your records. She didn't want it reviewed by you personally unless you approved. But I read it, and I think you should see it. Especially page 2. Clarissa. I opened the document. Her proposal was for a new initiative, hands open, not out, a peer-led support circle for women who had caused financial harm and were now trying to make amends. It was bold, messy,
Raw.
and the second page made me cry. I am not the victim in this story. I was the damage. But damage doesn't have to be permanent. It can become foundation if we let it. I stared at the sentence for a long time. Then I clicked approve. The day of the foundation's first public ceremony arrived quietly, without spectacle. No red carpets. No press swarms. Just a gathering of survivors, donors, volunteers, and the women we served. The Hollow Oak Fund had outgrown the office above the florist shop. We now occupied a modest suite downtown, complete with 2 counseling rooms, a legal aid parlor, and a glass boardroom named in honor of my late husband, the Frank Holloway Center for Financial Integrity. It was Clarissa's idea. But today, we weren't in an office. We were under the open sky. A restored park on the south end of the city, the kind where women had once walked with heads bowed low, afraid to meet each other's eyes. Today, we gathered there to unveil something new. Not a monument, not a statue, a bench. It had been Ava's idea. We need a place where women can rest, she'd said. Not because they're weak, but because they've carried so much. The brass plaque read, "For every woman who said no and meant it." Hollow Oak Fund. Ava stood beside me as the fabric fell away. Her hands didn't shake anymore. Her voice, when she introduced the new Hands Open, Not Out initiative, was clear and steady. And when the crowd clapped, she didn't look for my approval. She looked toward the bench, toward the future. Later, as the crowd dispersed and folding chairs were being packed away, Ava approached me slowly. "I know you're still watching," she said quietly. "And I don't blame you." I didn't deny it. She reached into her tote and pulled out a small notebook. "I want you to have this," she said. "It's part of the journaling curriculum from my court-ordered ethics program. They said we could write to anyone. Most wrote to victims. I wrote to myself." She handed it to me. "I didn't write it expecting you to read it," she added. "But I want you to, if you're ready." That night, I sat in my sunroom, the windows open, a cup of mint tea steaming beside me. I opened the notebook. The first page was dated 7 months ago. I stole from the woman who would have bled for me. I used her name like a weapon. I hurt her not just once, but repeatedly, because I thought forgiveness would always be there, like electricity. Invisible but guaranteed. Now I understand that forgiveness is like firewood. It burns out when someone keeps taking and never replaces it. I turned the page. I used to think I needed her to trust me again. But what I really need, is to become someone I trust again. Maybe then she'll follow. I stopped reading halfway through, because the tears came too fast. And I knew, for the first time in years, that my daughter was no longer trying to fake a version of herself I could live with. She was building a version of herself she could live with. 2 weeks later, I stood behind the podium at a regional women's summit. The audience was filled with nonprofit leaders, survivors, and policymakers. I wore a soft gray shawl, Frank's wedding band on a chain around my neck, and nothing but truth in my throat. "This isn't a story about a lottery ticket," I said. "This is a story about the cost of silence." I paused. "It's a story about a woman who forgot she was allowed to say no, who forgot she could protect herself, not just everyone else, who spent years trading her boundaries for belonging." I looked out at them and saw me, reflected in their faces. And then one day, she stopped making excuses. She stopped saving people who didn't want to be saved. And she chose herself. A beat. And it saved everything. The crowd rose slowly. The applause began like a ripple. It became a wave. That night, I returned home and made a pot of stew. Halfway through chopping carrots, there was a knock on the door. This time, I didn't check the camera. I just opened it. Ava stood there with a folder in hand. "I've been accepted into a social work program," she said. 2 nights a week. Community college. I smiled. I figured if I'm going to keep helping women rebuild, I should know what I'm doing.
Come in, I said.
She stepped across the threshold, this time with no conditions. No agendas. No unspoken debts. We sat together and ate in silence, like two people who had learned to love again. Not through erasing the past, but by refusing to live in it. The next morning, I walked to the park. I sat on the hollow oak bench with a thermos of tea and a blanket around my shoulders. And I watched as a woman I'd never seen before sat down at the other end. She held a court document in one hand and a child's drawing in the other. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. This bench was made for women like her. And for women like me. Some fortunes don't come from money. They come from a moment of clarity. From the first firm no. From the first step away from someone you love, when loving them means losing yourself. I had won the lottery. But the real jackpot was reclaiming my name and helping others protect theirs. If you've ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and protecting your peace, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true-to-life stories that remind us healing starts with one brave choice.